Well, good evening, everybody, and it's terrific to see a packed house for Palestine on a Friday night. Welcome. In this initial pitches, we could start, as it were, at the international pinnacle. And when I say nothing is happening, maybe something is. Perhaps I'm too negative. Filippo, enlighten us.
I've been 7 years in Palestine, and I've never seen a situation in which all the political avenues for the Palestinians to make progress are so closed. My message, of course, I'm not sure it is a new message, but a message that I do think is important, and it does concern a constituency which is often ignored when peace is talked about, is about the refugees. Let's not forget that there are about 5 million Palestinians that are registered as refugees with UNRWA. That's the bulk of the Palestinian refugees. That's a large constituency spread over a number of countries. And the message that one of the messages that I would like to promote tonight is that it is important not to neglect this constituency.
Thank you very much, Filippo.
I want to concentrate on something else. Since 1967, there have been 750,000 estimated acts of imprisonment, detention and arrest. 750,000 on a base of around 3.8 million. It's roughly between 60–70% of all adult males over the age of 14. Something like 20% of the population have been in one way or another passed through the Israeli system of either the judicial system or have been arrested and stopped in one way or another. This is, I think, is unparalleled in the whole history of conflict, certainly since the Second World War. An entire nation has gone through this extraordinary process of incarceration. It really is worthwhile thinking about highlighting the plight of Palestinian prisoners, choosing from the menu of long-term prisoners who really deserve. After all, the Israelis shake the hands of their leaders. It makes no sense for them to refuse to release those foot soldiers, and to find ways in which we can turn this mass of 750,000, this block, into stories, personal stories of people who have been unjustly, in many cases, put in jail.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. Ilan, are you more or less seeing the picture the same way that Ahmed is, as far as avenues and progress are concerned?
I'm much more hopeful about politics from below, and I think this is 2012. The zeitgeist is the politics from below, not the politics from above. Politicians nowhere are being particularly regarded as paragon, well, frankly, of anything. I think that there is a lot of new impulse and energy that comes from below, including in Israel, as was mentioned. What you can have is changing the paradigm, is really changing the paradigm. And the paradigm is, as was mentioned from the floor, the paradigm is that you have a regime that subscribes to an ideology which is the main obstacle for any peace and reconciliation. And if politics from above does not dare to say it for obvious reasons, politics from below has been saying it more forcefully than ever before. And you can see it in the British campuses, you can see it in the American supermarkets, and you will see it more and more.
Rosemary.
I'm proposing that, for example, the EU take an initiative, but it doesn't have to be. An international body take an initiative to conduct a comprehensive survey of the health and sanitation risks and needs in all deprived areas, which may turn out to include some Jewish, maybe some Haredim areas, but in a colorblind fashion that makes no distinction between areas A, B, C, military, closed, urban, rural, and makes no distinction between individuals on the basis of ethnicity or religion, be they Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Arab, Israeli, or Palestinian.
Well, there's a very interesting new idea, which we will not park, but we will have in the ether as we proceed, and we'll come back to in a moment. Richard, I was very intrigued by something else we'll come back to Rosemary on, which is the balance between, you know, ensuring people have basic fundamental health rights and the rest of it, and sustaining the occupation. And I'm wondering, well, you fire with whatever you came here armed with, but...
Well, science, telling stories, can be a catalyst, an instrument to create a global social movement that will say, this is unacceptable. We can change the political conditions for Palestinians. So I am a total optimist about what can be achieved. It was done in 1945. It was done for people living with AIDS. We can do it for the Palestinian people. We just have to have the vision, the imagination, the commitment, and the action to achieve it. So what do we need? In honor of Channel 4, we need a big brother in a Palestinian village. And this is what you'll see if you have 24-hour cameras in a Palestinian village. You will see when a child falls ill with pneumonia, the mother will not be able to get access to antibiotics. You will see when a man injures himself, perhaps fractures an arm or a leg, he will not have access to trauma care. You will see when a young family a young couple gets married, they will not be able to build a house because they will have to get a permit to build a house which will be denied them. You will see that a village that wants to build a clinic or a school will be denied the possibility of building a clinic or a school. You will see a woman who is pregnant, unable to get access to maternity care. You will see all of these things. And when the world sees the reality of Palestinian society, right now, today, this second, there will be an uprising. And there will be shame and horror brought on Israel.
I will never forget the image of a story I was told of a doctor having to provide medical treatment to a child across a fence. And if those stories, if there's a way of being able to tell those personal stories in a way to build a campaign and a movement that is much wider, that is not about the geopolitics, albeit vital, but people's everyday lives, that citizens, whether they're in my constituency in the East End of London or anywhere else, can connect with and relate to. That would be a way of trying to bring to attention to political leaders the severe need for action to restart negotiations, to try and start to address the wider political challenges that exist. But I think we have to start from the grassroots, and we have to find ways of connecting people in the West Bank and Gaza, as well as, of course, the diaspora and refugee population, and those who are supportive and sympathetic.
I'm fed up to the teeth with Foreign Office officials saying the Middle East peace process, as if it was still alive, as if there was actually something still there. Now, so in terms of how do you actually get a process that is viable, I will pitch one idea here is, should the quartet be kicked out? You can call that the sack Tony Blair option, if you like.
The situation in the area is not a natural disaster, it's a man-made disaster. Recently, an experienced international aid worker commented to me that aid in a conflict is not neutral. I'd like to know whether the panel would agree with this and how they think the politics of aid can be improved in the future.
I'm always worried when I hear this discussion about aid being an instrument of something else. Not because it is not true. I do agree, in fact. I've been, in aid for 30 years, so I've never seen aid not being politicized. The problem is I've never seen aid not being needed. So we have to be careful not to throw away the baby with the bathwater. Aid is essential, and aid is important. Palestinians need aid, because without aid, people in Gaza will be hungry.
I would like to say to Rosemary, this is quite refreshing what you're saying. You brought human to the conflict. that, you know, in the media they forget that there is kind of human people that need water. So I grew up in Israel, but I never thought that actually they need water.
The problem I see as a Palestinian is that there isn't enough exposure of us people. Like right now, we see what's happening in Syria, and we can be in the heart of Syria even though we don't have reporters, we don't have mainstream media running around reporting from Syria. Palestinians are not given that platform in the Western media, and specifically in England.
The media generally is totally overwhelmed by Middle East fatigue. The fatigue with the Palestinian-Israeli is total. It's extremely difficult to get stories on, and therefore one is much more dependent on the social networks, which are really beginning to cut some serious mustard. I mean, there are many people in this room with whom I have a Twitter relationship, for example, and etc. And this is fantastically hopeful because it bypasses all the decision-making and the rest of it.
Thank you. John, yes, Pauline McNeill, I'd spent 12 years in the Scottish Parliament and 20 years supporting this cause and the work that MAP and Caabu do. The critical thing is not simply about new ideas, it's how we get some of these brilliant ideas we're hearing so far, how are we going to get them into the political process?
Israel doesn't have the power that it used to, and conversely, the Palestinians are actually stronger than they were before because they have the Arab Spring, they have the support of the international solidarity movement. So my pitch is, let's give the Palestinians a negotiating chip and let's be with them.
Today, Palestinians and Israelis are stuck between the historically inevitable and the politically impossible. Aren't you sick and tired of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict? This is the most long occupation in modern history. This is a conflict that had brought to the brink international conflict, and still no solution is ever being put. There will never be a military solution to this conflict. Then we look at the situation on the ground. What do we have? A hibernating United States government today, you know, sleeping, elections and what have you. And very well said about the European Union. I don't want to reiterate that we have 27 countries with 27, you know, different policies, with 27 patron-client relationship. There will never be a consensus on issues like this. I think the question of steadfastness and political unity should be a high priority for the Palestinian leadership now. And let's not talk about one state, two state. And let's not talk about dismantling the Palestinian Authority and talk about... No, that's not the issue. The issue is that we have to be united. And this has been, Mr. Snow, the emblem of my university. In Latin, we say, in divisa manent, which means united we stand and divided we fall.
Well, I think it's clear that it's been a very, very interesting adventure. And there's been a lot of material that's come up, some really interesting ideas and thoughts. And of course, the one momentum that is on the loose now that wasn't on the loose in 1988 is the connection of people to people. And politics is about people. And in the end, we are in a new world, and nobody knows where that world is leading. But it can't be backwards. It has to be forwards. And I hope that tonight has been forwards. And if it has, it's down to the Kincaids, it's down to the Council of Arab and British Understanding and Medical Aid for Palestine and the staff of Church House and you, and also our panel. So I'd like to thank everybody.